اوكي تمام. هلا المفروض يكون الصوت تمام. راح ارجع اعيد المقدمة بحيث اذا ما كان الصوت موجود. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. معكم الأستاذ أسامة من مجموعة الواتن الدولية. اليوم إن شاء الله راح نستكمل درسنا في برنامج الفوتوشوب. طبعا أنا في برنامج الفوتوشوب نحن أخذنا تصميمات السوشيال ميديا. هي من أهم التصميمات اللي نحن ممكن نستخدمها في مجال السوشيال ميديا أو السوشيال ميديا ديزاينز. كما شرحت سابقا، السوشيال ميديا ديزاينز هي عبارة عن أنك أنت تعمل سوشيال أو تعمل تصميم عن عن إعلان معين، أو أي شيء بخص في السوشيال ميديا فقط، وليس في الإعلانات اللي بنشوفها نحن بالشارع. ولكن اليوم راح نشوف شيء عن إنه إحنا لازم نعمل إعلانات بالشارع، كيف ممكن إنها تصير أو كيف ممكن إحنا نشتغل بهالموضوع. أول شيء إذا نعمل إعلان يكون طباعي أو اللي بنشوفهم بالشوارع، أهم شيء نحن بدنا نعمله هو إنه نحن نتأكد عن صيغة الألوان. كيف ممكن نتأكد بصيغة الألوان؟ خلينا بس نحطها هي هون هيك. أوكي. نروح على نقول له فايل. ثواني شو. أوكي. نروح على الشاشة الرئيسية. فهي هي عنا الشاشة الرئيسية اللي احنا بنشتغل عليها. أول شيء بنروح على نيو فايل. طبعا نحن بيجيك عندك شو بسموها التاسك بشكل معين، وهذا الشكل المعين بيكون فيه قياسات الإعلان. يعني مثلا بدك الإعلان يكون طولي، بدك إياه عرضي، على حسب أنت كيف بتعمله، أو على حسب الإعلان. يعني مثلا في إعلانات خارجية أورجيكم إياها، الإعلانات اللي بتكون في الشارع مثلا. لا. إعلانات في الشارع. تعالوا نروح مثلا هون على الصورة. يعني مثلا خلينا نشوف كيف يعني إعلانات بالشارع عشان توضح لنا الفكرة. اوكي، خلينا نشوف تحت مثلا. خلينا نشوف اول اعلان يكون حقيقي. هذا كله هذا اغلب موك اب. خلينا نشوف مثلا هاد. فوت عليه. او مثلا خلينا نشوف مثلا اعلان مثلا نفس هذا بيكون اقرب. اوكي. عندنا مثلا الاعلان نفس هيك شيء. مثلا شوف اذا اجانا مثلا اعلان بهذا الشكل، او اعلان مثلا بهذا الشكل. حتى يمكن انك يجيك اعلان من هدول الشغلات الصغيرة. فهمت علي شلون؟ او مثلا خلينا مثلا نفس هيك ناخذ مثلا هذا القياس. بناخذ هذا القياس وبنعمل له شو بنعمل بالفوتوشوب. خلينا ننزل لتحت. خلينا نشوف تاني مثلا. شوف هي إعلان طولي. مثلا هذا إعلان عرضي بس مو كثير واضح. هذا إعلان كمان عرضي. فأنت على حسب الإعلان اللي بيجيك نحن بنشتغل. تمام. خلينا نرجع حاليا نحن على الفوتوشوب. رجعنا على الفوتوشوب. فعنا لما نحن نعمل شو بسموه، نعمل نيو فايل، حتطلع لنا هاي الواجهة. رح نفترض إنه الإعلان هو إعلان برنت. مثلا خلينا نقول إنه هو إعلان طولي. أوكي. فرح نقول إنه هو الإعلان حيكون بالسنتيمتر. طول الإعلان مثلا 21 سنتي. لا قليل، خلينا نقول له مثلا 120 سنتي، يعني مترين. 120 سنتي. وعرضه مثلا 300 سنتي. نقول له أوكي. فحيكون لا، وين راح الصورة؟ هو على الفوتوشوب بهذا الشكل. أوكي، أنا عملته بشكل عرضي بالغلط. خلينا نعمله بس بشكل طولي اللي هو هيك. نقول له أوكي. بهذا الشكل صحيح تماما. هيك عملته بالعرضي، هيك عملته بالطول، وهيك عملته بالعرض. تمام. خلينا نمسح تبع الطول وخلينا نحن بالعرض. هاي الواجهة غالبا بتكون وين؟ بالشوارع. يعني احنا بنشوفها دائما. آه، بي بي شو بيسموه بالشوارع مثلا بالطرقات السريعة. ولكن في نقطة مهمة. النقطة هي إنه نحن لما نعمل الإعلان نتأكد من شو بسموه القياس بشكل جدا منيح. ليه؟ لأنه في حال خطأ واحد، سنتي واحد كان غلط، الإعلان كله راح ينكب ولازم نرجع نعمله من جديد. فهي نقطة جدا مهمة. تمام. فخلينا احنا نشوف كيف عندنا أمثلة عن إعلانات الشارع. خليكم معي. أو كيف ممكن نحن نعمل. خليكم معي حاليا لأنه راح نشوف كيف ممكن نحن نعمل إعلانات بالشوارع علشان نشتغل سوا. خليكم بس نروح فوتوشوب. لأنه نحن في عنا كتير إعلانات شوارع، بس نحن بدنا نختار منها الأكثر انتشارا عشان نحن نعمل معكم شير سكرين. أوكي. أم، خلينا نشوف هذا مثلا. هاي إعلانات الشوارع ولكن اللي من عام التسعينات. فخلينا نشوف، وخلينا نحن نشوفها مع بعض. خلينا ننقلها لهون ونروح على الشير سكرين رقم 2. بنقول له أوكي. طبعا مثل ما احنا شايفين هون نحن قصدنا انه يكون الفيديو بشكل، او يكون التصميم معنا تصميم اعلاني مثلا. على فكرة التصميمات الاعلانية يمكن حتى تكون هي في الجريدة، هاي تعتبر تصميمات شوارع. ليش؟ لانه الجريدة هي تطبع. فانا قصدي انه كله بهذا الشغل كله نحن نعمل شيء طباعي. هذا اهم شيء. فلما يكون طباعي فهذا يعني انك انت حتعمل له بصيغة السي ام واي كي. خلينا نرجع نبلش الشغل. تمام. هون بحكي لك كيف انك انت بنعمل تصميمات قديمة ولكن تكون بصيغة السي ام واي كي ويكون فيها كأنها هيك نويز. اوكي. هون نحن راح يبلش فيها. خلينا نكون معنا في الأول، التوتوريال الأول. هون في شيء عنا اسمه البرنت. هي أهم نقطة إنها تكون الشغل يكون بالبرنت. إذا ما كان بالبرنت وكان بالار جي بي راح يكون عنا يعني على الفاضي الشغل، لأنه حتطلع الصورة باهتة جدا. فنحن نكون ضمنانين انها تكون بالسي ام واي كي. هاي اهم شغله، نحن نضمن انها تكون بالسي ام واي كي. تمام. طبعا هون بلشنا بالمربعات عشان نشتغل فيها. تمام. هون بلشت طبعا بالكتابات. عندنا الكتابات انت حسب شو بدك تعملها، بنعملها، ما في عندنا اي مشكلة، على حسب بقى كل نوع من الكتابة، وعلى حسب كل تصميم ممكن احنا نشتغل عليه. على كل نوع تصميم نحن بنبلش بكتابة معينة. طبعا هلا احنا عم نشوف بشكل نظري، رح نروح بعد شوي على العملي بإذن الله تعالى. طبعا حاليا نحن عم نختار الصور. طبعا هون بلشنا نضيف الصور. طبعا الصور انت بتختارها عادي، ما في عندك مشكلة، او ممكن انك انت تضيفها من برا. حتى في منهم موجودين في الستوك تبع ادوبي، ما عندك اي مشكلة. طبعا هون نحن خلصنا من أول تصميم، رحنا على التصميم الثاني اللي فيه الكلام باللغة الإنجليزية، ولكن هاي على طريقة التشوز. بس هلأ هذا الآن نحن ما فيه لسه مو مبين إنه هو قديم، بس هذا رح نخليه قديم. طبعا نحن من محل ما تركنا المرة الماضية، اللي هو عن إزالة الشعر، بس نحن ما كملناها. المفروض نحن هلأ نكملها من اليوم. هي كمان لها علاقة بطباعة في السوشيال ميديا. لاحظتوا كيف عملنا ماسك للشعر بحيث انه هو يبين وراه انه كأنه الشعر مختفي، ما يكون ابيض فقط مثل قبل شوي. بس هذا الشيء طبعا بده كتير دقة وبده شوية تعب. فدائما التاسكات اللي نحن بناخذها يكون هيك الشعر تبعها نحن بناخذ عليها مصاري اكثر، لانه فيها تعب اكثر. فبهي الحالة نحن بدنا بنشتغل اكثر مثل ما بنعرف. طبعا. وهون نفس الشيء بالنسبة للتفريغ، بس هذا التفريغ أسهل من التفريغ اللي قبل. التفريغ اللي قبل كان صعب بالنسبة لأنه كان فيه شعب وكان فيه كتير أشياء دقيقة، فلازم نحن ننتبه لها. شو ما في شغلات فعادي. طبعا هذا القسم ما راجعنا، فلازم نراجع مع بعض هلا سوا. المفروض يكون هلا في صوت للفيديو.
Now we're going to use the kind of probably the most universally useful
بالضبط هيك
tool,
تمام.
and it's the quick selection tool. So if you click and hold down, you might be using the magic wand tool, which is fine, but it's not as good as the quick selection tool. Let's grab him. Now just double check your what your settings are at the top here. I'm going to be on the adding to the selection option, which is a little plus, or you can be on this first option. It doesn't matter, either of those two. And in terms of the brush size, okay, you can drag this up and down and decide on where you need to be. We're going to start with 50 and just show you how it works. Okay, roughly 50, doesn't really matter. Let's just copy my settings there. Cool. And all we need to do is click hold and start dragging across. Now what you'll notice is I'm going to step back. I'm going to go to select, deselect. I don't kind of like start selecting the edge. You don't need to. It's a pretty clever tool. I'm going to just start dragging kind of like around the edge. And can you see the little dotted line? They're the marching ants, and they just help identify what we've got selected. So I'm just going to kind of drag around and drag. You can see it just did a big launch across there. And it kind of just, it's so clever. It just starts thinking, oh, well, you've selected this, so you probably want a bit more of this. And it does, it jumps across. So I'm going to now click over here and start dragging. Okay, and you can see I can let go of my mouse and I've got part of it selected. Sometimes it's a little bit hard. You're like, what have I got selected? What do I not? Okay, and the easiest way to do it is just kind of turn this option on and off. Okay, it's called quick mask mode. Just turn it on and it just shows you, kind of masks everything out in red. Okay, so turn it on and off just to see. Don't double click it. Okay, so just turn it on and slowly turn it off. What I'm going to do is going to keep just dragging around, and you can see I'm not going anywhere near the edges. It's pretty clever. The only thing it hasn't done is these little guys in the bottom here. Now I've picked a pretty good example for this, so when you're maybe using your own stuff, we're going to learn in some future videos a little bit of extra tricks to get some more tougher selections. But if it's a product shot or something like this, it's a really nice studio shot, it's going to be easy to select. So these bits here are not quite right. So I'm going to zoom in. So Command plus on my Mac, Control plus on a PC, spacebar, holding down my spacebar and dragging with my mouse. Okay, you can see it's missed these bits and there's a little bit of stuff in there. Yeah, quick selection is quick. Okay, it's not going to be absolutely perfect, but it's pretty close. So what I want to do is minus from my selection. Okay, but my brush is quite big, so it doesn't fit in there. So I'm going to lower the brush size to something quite small. Teeny tiny. And I'm going to click in here, say get rid of that. And you'll notice that when I start dragging, it goes and it looks horrible. And when I let go of my mouse, look, magic. If it's, what you can do is this auto enhance option on. The only trouble with it, it does a better selection, which is cool, but it does stress your machine out. So get in there. And I've got a really pretty high powered laptop and it does stress it out. Don't worry about getting too far into these edges in this example. Okay, we're going to do some more sophisticated selections later on. So I've kind of tidied that up using the minus. If I say I go too far, grab a bit of that, and it's like, oh no, it's gone too far. Go back to plus and just drag across that bit. Auto enhance, you can see, kind of stresses it out a little bit. Cool, so let's zoom out and let's see what we got. Have I missed anything? Click on the quick selection tool, it's pretty good, go off. So now we're going to move it into this file here. We're going to use our technique where we just drag it. Okay, and one thing we might notice, let's do it first. Let's click, hold, and drag it. Okay, and drag it into this tab, wait, calm down. You'll notice that my one has not the most beautiful edge. Okay, so I'm going to edit, step backwards until it's gone. Come back here, and I'm just going to kind of shrink the selection a little bit. We're going to look at more sophisticated ways of doing this later on, so don't worry. I guess we're just kind of getting used to the tools. Quick selection is an awesome one, but the edges aren't perfect, so we're going to go to select, modify, and we're going to go to contract. And how many pixels? You'll have to experiment depending on your image. Okay, but I'm going to go back maybe 3 pixels, not 30. Click OK. Now with my move tool, click, hold, and drag it, and it's going to be better. Not perfect, okay, but it's a quick solution for the quick mask. Okay, and now I'm just going to go and kind of rejig this to show you what it looked like at the beginning. But if you're happy with that, you can move on to the next tutorial. That's the quick selection tool. But a quick caveat with that tool there, I've picked an image that works well with it. It's got nice, clear, defined edges. When we get into things like hair and out of focus objects, quick selection tool is not going to work. Okay, so it's one of your tools in your Photoshop toolkit, and we'll look at more advanced ones later on. But for studio shots and anything that has a clear, sharp edge, it's super quick and easy. So what I want to do is I want to resize it. So I'm going to name my layer flower. My spelling is terrible. I spelled that flowerists when I first start with a U. I had to go back and reshoot this bit. So I'm going to use my selection tool, okay, or my move tool, move it around. I'm going to use my edit, transform, scale, and I'm going to shrink it down holding shift. This is stuff we already know, so if you want to skip along, it's okay. I'm going to rotate it. I'm going to get it down to a size that I like. Hit return on my keyboard, edit, transform, rotate. Okay, click anywhere on the outside here and get this kind of, what I'm looking to do in this case is I want to do, rotate it around. I want this kind of Dublin to be behind and the florists to be above. So I've got it into where I want, hit return, and we're going to play with a layer order. I love this kind of like real subtle interaction with the background where, watch this, I'm going to bring the flower in between these two guys here. That way the kind of D is partially obscured. You can still understand it's the word Dublin and florists is above. And for no reason other than to balance up the composition, I'm going to right click this, duplicate the flowers layer, and a flower too. How about that? With my move tool, move them over. Now, instead of going to edit, transform, scale, rotate, we're going to use this one here, the free transform tool, which does both. Okay, so from now on, I'm just going to use the free transform tool. The Command T on a Mac or Control T on a PC is a really common shortcut to know. Okay, so if you're going to be learning any shortcuts, that's a good one. Because what it does is allows me to hold down shift and resize it. But at the exact same time is if I go move away from here, I go to rotate, I can rotate it around as once. If you're finding that tough, don't sweat it. You can go back in and just do it the long way. But I want to do it the quick way. How balanced is it? It's not super balanced. I need to find another image and crop it out, but I'm not going to. Hit return, and that is going to be me for this tutorial. All right, so that's the quick selection tool. It is really amazing, but there's a few other things that we need to learn in terms of selections and masks before you're a pro. So join me in the next tutorial where we learn what a layer mask is. Hi there, in this video we're going to learn what a layer mask is. Basically we're going to take the same tutorial we did in the last video but do it properly with something called a layer mask. The cool thing about them is you can turn them off later on, disable them, bringing back the background, fixing your masks, and then we'll really double back and look at this option and you can see we can fade the edges, we can break the link, we can move them around so that we've got more control, more professionalism, more awesome. Let's do that now in Photoshop. So what is this layer mask that I speak of? Okay, it's probably better just to go through and show you an example. You'll see all the perks and pros for using a layer mask. So I'm going to double back and use the exact same files as the last tutorial, so 14A and B, and we're going to get up to the point where we were at. I'm using the quick selection tool, okay, and I'm just drawing around super quick, and I've got my selection, right? And what we did before is then use the move tool to just drag it in, okay? The problem with that is it's something called destructive editing. And what I'm deciding is that, watch this, if I move this out, I've cut that background out forever and my selection is kind of fused forever and there's no going back from that. And that's not what I want to do in Photoshop. I want to make a selection, maybe a quick selection like this, and then maybe go and fix it up later on or make adjustments or just have a bit of flexibility. To do that, you make your selection like we did here. Instead of dragging it, you just click this button down here. Okay, it says add a mask. Okay, and it's called a layer mask. And what happens is, ready, give it a click, and the background disappears. Okay, I need to go through and fix my edges. That's fine. There's a few little places that need touching up, but we'll do that in the next video. But what's happened is, can you see this layer structure over here? My image is protected. It's perfectly fine. There's nothing destroyed about it. This mask just sits over the top hiding things. And where that becomes really nice is that later on I can go and fix my mask or do a better edge on this or reuse this image for something else where I don't need it to be masked. Let's go and use it. So I'm going to grab my move tool, click, hold and drag up to the top here using my technique. You can see we end up in the same place. We've got the same kind of edge here, but you can see over here the mask came along, which is lovely. And now I can do some modifications to the edge here. Okay, whereas before I couldn't. So what I can do is see this down here in my layers. I'll toggle between the two. Can you see those lines that appear on the outside? Because you can work on the image or the mask separately. You can see your properties panel changes depending on what part you've got selected. I've got my layer mask selected, and it gives me options to play around with this mask. And a real basic one is the feather. So watch this, I can crank up the feather and it just kind of feathers the out edges a little bit. Okay, so it wasn't so bitsy and yucky. Okay, it's because it's on a black background, it's gonna kind of let the background of the actual image through. And often this is all you need to do to get a selection looking nice, just give it a little bit of a feather. So let's look what else you can do with it. So I can right click on my mask and say just disable. I'm not turning it off forever. I can just see what was in the background. There's not much because it was a black image in the background. But if there was other elements that maybe I cropped off that shouldn't have cropped off, I can just double check. Okay, so this is a very similar thing than what we did in the last video where we, kind of cropped it out, but now we can go back. Yay for layer masks. So whenever I'm looking at people's work and I'm seeing if they're kind of self-taught or using it like a professional, I'd be always looking for layer masks to give future self or other people in the business that open your PSD files the ability to go back and adjust your mask, either fix it or maybe just turn it off so they can use the image. I can turn it back on by right-clicking it and going enable layer mask, or I can delete it forever and get rid of it and maybe start again. So hopefully you can see the perks for a layer mask. What we'll do is we'll look at maybe another example that better shows its like amazingness. Okay, so we're going to go back to files we had open before. Remember we did this one here. We did 12A and B. Remember we used the circle, it was these two. Remember we copied and pasted this in. So we're going to do the exact same thing again, but just use our layer mask to give ourselves like some professional, awesome skills. So I'm going to drag out my circle holding shift, get it there. And instead of just going to my move tool and dragging it out, cutting the background out, never to be used again, I'm going to undo. And I'm just going to click this button. So it's not much in terms of what you do, except you can see here, it's probably a better example where I've got this mask, this black versus white, on top of my image, and the image is perfectly fine. Here's what's called non-destructive. Now we use my technique, grab the move tool, drag it into this one, down here. Okay, now I can go through and start scaling it. So remember, I'm going to use my shortcuts from now on, Command T. Okay, I'm going to scroll it down, get it down. And let's look at some of the other perks. I'm going to hit return, so that's done. But remember the edge we had before, which was it was just really hard edged. Okay, so it didn't look really believable as much as a galaxy in a cup does. But remember the feather, I can just kind of feather the edge here. I'll go maximum feather so you can kind of see the edges there, but you can see I'll move it out so you can see it. It's got a blurry, feathery edge, okay, and it just helps that to look slightly more believable. It gets better. Layer mask time, you can see at the moment it moves together, the mask and the image, but you can break that link. See this little linking icon here? Click on it. Okay, and now, remember I can click on my mask or my image. In this case, I want to leave my mask where it is because it's kind of in the right position for the coffee cup. But if I grab my image now, move tool, look at that. How pro are we? Okay, we can get our composition right or make adjustments that the client asked us, or you get the idea, right? So in this class so far, we've been doing destructive editing, okay, by just copying and pasting it or dragging it. From now on though, you and me are going to use layer masks. Turn the link back on, because otherwise it's a bit funny having them separate. And now let's get into the next video where we start tidying up some of the less easy selections to make. We've been doing it easy so far. Let's make it hard, or at least harder. All right, see you in that video where we look at something called select and mask. Hello, in this tutorial, we're going to take some more complicated selections and masks. The most complicated of them all is here. That's a little out of focus in the background here. Okay, and using the power of Photoshop and its amazing select and mask feature, hey, we're going to mask it out against a sunset background just because, using the underwhelmingly named select and mask feature. It's amazing. Let's go and do it now. All right, so we've got two files open. We've got 14A, which we've used before, and we're going to open up this new one called 15. Okay, so grab both of those open and let's start with 14A. And we're going to build on some of the techniques we've already learned. So we are going to use our quick selection tool. We're going to use a brush size of, it doesn't really matter, okay, in this case, because it's such a clear division of color in the background. So I'm going to click hold and start dragging around, and we did this in the previous tutorial. So I've got most of it there. It's done an okay job. The only thing I need to fix up is just these bits in the middle here. So I'm going to zoom right in. I'm going to pick a smaller brush size. Now it's shortcut time. Okay, we're not going through too many in this course because we are at the beginning kind of level, but there's some really useful shortcuts. Like, so look at your keyboard and you're looking at the P key, okay, and we are using the square brackets that's next to it. Okay, so the open and close square brackets, give them a try and make your brush bigger and smaller instead of going up the top here and going, okay, now I need a smaller brush size and dragging it up and down. Okay, it's a nice way to get started. So I'm going to do something quite small and I want to minus from the selection. So I can go to minus here, okay, and just kind of remove that bit there. Give it a second, minus that bit there. Okay, I'm going to go even smaller, get this bit in there, this bit in there. I'm not going to spend too long now because that was for a different tutorial. I'm going to tidy that up. I say no, but I'm going to do it anyway. Zoom out and I've got my selection, and like we did in the previous tutorial, we're going to add a layer mask because that's non-destructive and awesome, and we're going to have something that has an okay edge. Okay, and we looked at doing feather, and feathers doesn't kind of work. What we want to do is maybe tuck it in a little bit. So what we're going to use is this magic thing here called select a mask. If you can't see it, you might be on this thumbnail here, it doesn't appear. So I can click on my mask and then select a mask appears in my properties panel. Okay, so click on select a mask. They should call it like super amazing mega masking fixer thing. Okay, because it's got an insignificant name, select and mask, but it does some really amazing tricks. Okay, so yours might look like more like this. So we need to do a couple of things. The first thing is along the top here, we need to decide on, I think it defaults to onion skinning. We can check it against different backgrounds. Now this will depend on your actual image. Ours is white against black. So if I start masking it against black, okay, it's just put a solid black background in there to kind of show me the edge. It doesn't show me it very well. Whereas white, I zoom in a little bit, you can see it's a really easy contrast against the edges here. So decide what works for you on black, on white. It might be on the layers, that might be one that works for you as well if you've got a layer underneath. So where does the magic happen? Magic happens is there's kind of two ways. If you go to edge detection, okay, and often you can just lift this up and it fixes a lot of things, okay? I'm gonna crank it up a little bit and I'll show you the preview on and off. It can stress your computer out a little bit. Now also note that we're not looking at high quality preview. You can turn this on, it just stresses your machine out even more trying to produce these previews. So if the machine is struggling, you can turn that off. I turn mine on, and what we're gonna do is look at the original. Okay, this one here that says show original, click that. So that's what it used to look like. Okay, and that's what it looks like now. So it's kind of softened that edge nicely. The shortcut for it is P, and I use that quite a bit. So just tap P on your keyboard to turn it on and off, on and off. It smoothed it out, but it hasn't perfected it. I find the magic potion often is down in here and under output, and this decontaminate colors. This works really well when there's a huge contrast between the background and the foreground that you're trying to mask out from, and the color kind of leaks around the outside. So if this was against blue, you'd have like a blue kind of halo around the outside, and that's often where the problems with selections are. So you can click on decontaminate colors and magic. Okay, so hit P on, P off. Now that's fixed this particular one really well. What we'll do is we'll open a more complicated example. We'll finish this one off first, but we'll get into a more complicated example. Okay, so there are other options. We'll go into global refinements. Now, this is work for this particular exercise. You might find you've got a very similar flower against the background, but those two tricks didn't work. Don't think radius and decontaminate colors are the only things to do. Start playing around with smooth. Okay, so let's turn decontaminate colors off. And then you can see the smoothness just kind of tries to kind of smooth out any kind of jagged lines that you might have got in your selection. Feather does what we did in the earlier example. Okay, I don't find that super helpful. Contrast shift edge. Shift edge is a handy one. Okay, just gonna watch this. If I go a little bit this way, you can see it's just tucking it in. So instead of decontaminating the colors, it's just kind of shifting the edge of this radius, minusing it a little bit. Okay, so kind of trimming off the edges. Find that is a reasonably useful one too. Okay, so there is a lot of experimentation with this tool, I guess is what I'm trying to get across. Okay, when you're finished, what we're gonna do, I'm gonna output to our layer mask, okay? You can create a new layer from our selection. I'm just gonna adjust the one I've already got and click OK. But what I should have done before I clicked OK, go back to select a mask, and the decontaminate colors is what did the magic for us. And I'm going to say, let's make a new layer with this new layer mask so I can see my old one versus my new one. So there's the new one. I'll turn that off, turn my old one back on, create an edge, turn that one off, that one on, nice edge. But let's go and look at a more complicated example, some hair, or this will work the same for, say, some grass or something that's really hard to select. So let's jump over here to the 15. So this one's a lot trickier. Where it's really hard to do selections is here, and out of focus here could be the hardest. So I'm going to show you a reasonably, hard thing to do. Is it going to be absolutely perfect using select and mask? No, but it's going to get you most of the way there. It's pretty amazing. So what I've done for you for this particular file is I've got two layers. I've got the model on top of a background. We're going to try and match these two up. Okay, what they have to do with our florist, I'm not sure, but I wanted to do here because everyone's going to ask about it. I know. It always happens in my classes. So with the layer selected, okay, I'm going to go back to my quick selection tool, pick a size. Okay, I'm going to start with 50 just because. And I'm just going to click and drag around to try and get most of it. Cool. So if you're playing along, yours is not going to be, depending on where you selected, okay, it's going to be slightly different result from where I'm at. Okay, but I've got a reasonably, it's a pretty cool selection, okay? And what I want to do is add a layer mask. Okay, you're like, not very convincing, Dan. All right, so what we need to do now is click on my mask, go select a mask, and up the top here, we've got to decide against what background we want to see it. Now, you can see against white, against black is probably better in this case. Remember before it was white, so against black is nicer here. On layers could be quite useful as well, because sometimes you can get a bit carried away with like getting the most perfect mask when really it just needs to look good against here. So let's start with on black to make it clear for you. Now the radius is just not going to work in this case. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see kind of, because there's two like contrasting areas. There's this kind of out of focus here, but the nice strong crisp edge of the skin here. If I lift up the radius, it's going to try and, it's fixing the skin a bit, but it's kind of not doing a great job over here. So radius is not particularly going to work for me on this case. Now I can play along with global refinements. The problem is it's doing it globally, and I have these two really different kind of things going on. So I want to use some of these brush tools on the side here, and it's this one here that's going to do most of our work. It's called the Refine Edge brush tool. Okay, and basically it's a brush tool to say, Photoshop, have another go. Have another look at this particular area that I'm painting and see if you can fix it for me, like magic. I'm going to use a bigger brush size. Now, I'm cheating in using square brackets, okay? You can use the slider up here to pick a different brush size, but to make it go bigger and smaller, have a look down your keyboard. It's a shortcut, okay? It's one of the really helpful ones when you're doing lots of masking. Next to your P key, just to the right of it, are square brackets. The opening and the closing, just tap them and see that it'll make your brush bigger and smaller. I find this is a real easy way to work. So what I'm going to do is make a nice big brush and say, Photoshop, please have a look at paint. I'm going to paint across this and have another look at this stuff. Give it a second to catch up. Okay, and it's gone through and tried to remask this part, not touching this. I might do this one. I'm going to grab a smaller brush and say, actually, have a look at this as well. I'm just painting along down here. Wow, it's hard to do. It's very steady hand. You might zoom in and just do a nicer job. Okay, so it's kind of fixed. So you can kind of see I can work on different areas and kind of start using some of these edge detection features, but not globally, just particular parts. So I'm just going to work around and say, that was a bad go, have another go. This wasn't great. This wasn't great. This wasn't great. Moving around, give that another go. This bit another go. Now remember we're doing against black, and it's not a, like it's very unforgiving. So it's a good way to get started, but don't get disheartened if you're like, man, this is never going to look good. It's not perfect around the outsides yet. I'm going to keep working around. Have another go at that, please. That guy, that guy, that guy. All right, I'm going super fast. I should be changing my brush size a little bit more, but let's just have a little look against our background. So let's look at against the layers. So this is kind of a more important kind of thing to look across. You can see some of the hairs coming through, which is cool. It's not as blobby, but there's a little bit of blue. Now, do you remember from the last thing we did where if there's color kind of leaking around the sides? I love this one here under output called decontaminate colors. And it kind of just tries to get rid of that stuff around the outside. And we're looking pretty magic now, right? I'm impressing myself, which I shouldn't because I've done this before, but I'm impressed with Photoshop. It's really cool, especially this selector mask. And you can see now I can just zoom in and just work on the parts that I find aren't quite working. So you have to change your brush size. It's going to go through and have another little look. Let's zoom out. Okay, see how convincing it is. I'm going to probably have to go through and have a little look at doing a little bit more with the brush for these kind of bits that are still a little bit blue. But you can see if you've tried to do this in Photoshop before and like it's used to be impossible, okay? So selector mask has really kind of lifted that game for us. For things like here that are out of focus or trees and leaves that are kind of moving. So there is just times where it's just really hard. If you've got somebody with sandy blonde hair moving out of focus against the hay bale, selector mask is not going to be your super awesome selection trick. You need some sort of contrast. So if you're in charge of the photo shoot, make sure that there's some sort of contrast against your model or the product that you're shooting so that you can use tools like this later on in post. All right, I hope you have fun with it. I love it when it came out. Selector mask, you are awesome. Thank you, Photoshop. Let's get into the next tutorial where we start looking at smart objects. Hi there, in this video we're going to look at what a smart object is. A lot of people ask me, why should I be using them? They're on lots of forums, people say always use smart objects. Okay, we're going to dive in, figure out the pros and cons for them right now in Photoshop. Alright, so we're going to look at the two parts. We're going to look at smart objects for images and then we'll look at it for things like logos and icons. They're traditionally called vector objects. So, to get started, make sure you've got 16A open, okay, 16A smart objects from the source files. Now let's bring in an image. Now we're going to do it our way, file, open, okay, and let's open up the one called 16B, okay, another image from Norwood Themes. Great, so we're going to use our trick, move tool, click, hold, drag, drag, drag. We've done this before, we're getting pretty good at it, right? Okay, and we've got our image here. It's really big, okay, lots of quality in there, awesome. And I want to scale it down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the wrong way, well, the way we've been doing it, and then the new fancy way. So I'm going to grab my edit, transform, and scale. Remember, I'm going to use my shortcut, Command T. I'll zoom out a little bit. Okay, I'm going to scale it down to something a lot more appropriate. And let's say I get it down to this size. For what reason? Mainly just to show you an example. Let's say I want to use it quite small. I'm going to remove the background. It's going to be this like little petite thing in here, okay? I click return, done. And then later on, I'm like, actually what I might do is make it bigger. So I'm going to use my shortcut again, Command T on a Mac, Control T on a PC, and I'm going to make it nice and big. What you'll notice is, can you see the quality of this guy here? I want it nice and big in here, okay? Hit return, the quality just disappeared. Okay, and that's where the value of a smart object comes in. Okay, if you make it really small, Photoshop goes, okay, I'm going to get rid of all the pixels I don't need, and when you make it bigger, they're just not there anymore, unless we use a smart object. So with this layer selected, I'm going to delete them, okay, and we're going to bring in the proper way. So same technique, drag it across to this tab here, and before you do anything, right-click the layer where it says Layer 1, okay, and we're going to convert to Smart Object, and nothing looks like it changes. Okay, the only thing that changes really is the icon here on the thumbnail that wasn't there before. We turn it off, turn it back on. Cool, so that is, yeah, basically all you need to do. You don't need to remember to do much, okay? But what happens now if I go to my transform, and I scale it down smaller, okay, petite, I'm not sure why I use that word. Okay, oh, bad transform. Hold down Shift, Dan. Okay, hit return. It's really teeny tiny. Zoom in. Okay, but when I make it bigger, let's go. You can see all the quality is still there. Okay, so that's the kind of thing for smart objects. What it is think of it like a wrapper that goes around the outside. It's like a little cocoon. Hit return now. It's a little cocoon that I put the image inside. Okay, that protects it. So even though I make it smaller, it's in this kind of like protective shell. Inside that shell is still a full quality image. Now your file size will be bigger, okay, because we've got the big version in there, but it means that it gives me lots of flexibility later on to do resizing, and it protects it from what's called destructive editing, things that'll wreck the image, okay? You can kind of do stuff to it, but inside is still the good version. What I'm gonna do now is do this. I'm gonna play with my layer order. Now, just so you know the structure of this, I made a rectangle using the rectangle tool. Where is he? There. Okay, and then I added our color gradient overlay. We did this earlier in the course, right? I've got some text there as well. All right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to look at, so images are used that way. That's the best way to use them. Let's look at, say, icons and logos. So let's bring it in, and you can bring in logos two different ways. I'll show you two different ways because, yeah, there's just some people, if you've already got Illustrator skills, what you're probably going to be doing is working in Illustrator. So I'm in Adobe Illustrator. You don't have to do this. You can just watch if you don't have Illustrator installed. I'm going to file open to my exercise files, and I'm going to open up this one here, 16C. Okay, it's my vector logo. And the cool thing about this, so Illustrator is really handy for drawing things like logos and icons, okay, better than Photoshop. But let's say it's been drawn in this program. What I can do is grab my black arrow, select it all, go to copy, okay, edit copy, jump back into Photoshop, okay, and then go edit paste. And here you'll be, it defaults to pixels, and pixels is not the good way. We love smart objects, okay? Let's do the before and after. So I'm gonna bring in pixels and hit return, okay, to get it the right size. I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna paste it again. So I've got two options. One is smart objects. Let's turn off add to my current library for the moment. Doesn't really matter. Let's click OK. I'm gonna hit return, get it the right size. So now I have two using both methods. Okay, and the difference is going to be that same scaling thing there. So I'm going to zoom a little bit so you can see it. And they're both the same kind of quality at the moment. So this is my second one. That's the first one. Let's name them. Let's go no smart, not smart. This one here is very smart. I'm going to select both of them at the same time. Click the first one, hold shift, click the second one. I'm going to use my shortcut for scaling. Remember, Command T on a Mac, Control T on a PC, and get ready for it. Let's zoom out. Okay, and let's make this thing very big. And I'm going to hit return. You'll notice that the one on the left here, okay, is, let's have a little look. One on the left here is horrible. You've all seen that, okay? It's all pixelated and there's interpolation everywhere. See, this guy, Smart Object Man, is, look how crispy he is. Or she. It's probably a she. Okay, so that is the big difference. Okay, when you're bringing in logos or icons you've got from, say, your Envato Elements account, and it does give you the option. It says, would you like it to be a smart object? Yes. Smart object is the way to go. Why would you not use a smart object? There is a handful of, say, filters up here that just won't work if there is, like lens blur won't work if it's a smart object. Every new version of Photoshop, they seem to be able to include more and more of these features. So smart blur doesn't work on that, but let's look at the not smart object. Okay, and let's go to filter, blur, and lens blur is available. So that's one of the drawbacks. Okay, the other drawback, it makes the file size big. Let's say you did want to use lens blur. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of my not very smart layer. Goodbye. Let's say I'd like this though, and I'd like to kind of make it nice and big, but I want to add a lens blur to it. So it's not going to work until I convert it back into a not smart object. Okay, and what that's really called is if you right click the word very smart, there's one that says rasterize layer. Nothing's going to change, except now when I scale it up, it's not going to have my crisp quality. It'll scale down just fine, but any bigger, it's not going to be able to redraw. So I don't want to do filters, just kind of an example, I guess. I'm going to go to edit, step backwards until my little icon appears. And I'm going to show you one of the other perks for using a smart object, especially with things like logos and icons. So I'm going to do a couple things. I'm going to shrink it down because it's meant to be kind of over here. My arrow keys just to tap it around on my keyboard. Let's make it white with this layer selected. We're going to use the effects and we'll use color overlay. And mine's already defaulted to white, which is cool. Click OK. So I've got that version, right? Now I want to use it in a kind of like a hero graphic way. So that big kind of thing you saw at the beginning, kind of covering the background. So I'm going to right click him. I'm going to duplicate him. I'm going to give him a name. Let's call him hero graphic. So I've got two of them now, kind of on top of each other. I'm going to scale this one up. And because it's a smart object, it's got all the lovely vector. Hit return when you're finished. I'm going to lower the opacity to kind of make it a more of a watermark thing in there. Oh, yeah, looks okay-ish. So where the perk is, I've got two versions of this now. And let's say that I'm still developing this logo or icon and I want to change it. There's a really cool, neat little trick you can do with smart objects. I can double click, let's say, the very smart option, double click the thumbnail or this little icon, double click it. Now it's going to open up in the program that created it. Okay, so in this case, it's going to be Illustrator. Okay, so I'm going to click OK. And what it does is, you see that original guy I copied across? Okay, it's the second version, like they're not connected. That original one I made and copied in doesn't have any sort of connection, so I'm just going to close them down. But this guy here that says Vector Smart Object, there's a total connection back to my Photoshop. What I can do is, let's zoom in. Okay, I'm just going to do a real basic. Use my white arrow and I click on this thing here, and I'm just going to drag the point, move the handles. I don't know what I'm doing. Reckon it. Okay, so I'm just adjusting this. Okay, clients ask for changes or I just don't like it. When I hit save, so I'm going to go to File, Save, jump back into Photoshop. You ready? Can you see? It got the little tab there. Okay, that's the little thing we made. Okay, there he is there. And there's the big tab there. So they're connected together. Okay, so it makes for like lots of changes, especially if you're doing say you've got lots of you use the logo a few different times. Okay, it's all connected. Even if you're just using it once, it's nice to be able to go inside, make a change and see it update across different artwork. I am totally wrecking this thing now, just because. Nope. That is wrecked. Save it, jump back in here. You can see I've wrecked my logo. Jump back in here, undo it, save it, back into here, and it updates. So to recap, basically bring in an image, whatever size it is, convert it to a smart object, do your work. If you have to convert it into a non-smart object, okay, it's right-clicking it and rasterizing it. There are some extra perks for vector objects, okay, copying and pasting from, it works the same for InDesign or Illustrator, copying and pasting logos in. The other thing I'll quickly show you is, instead of copying and pasting from Illustrator, you can use this file, and this one here, it says Place Embedded. If I click on this, I can do the same thing without helping to open up Illustrator. You might not be that keen on that. You might not have any skills in Illustrator, so you can go straight to here, bring in your vector file, place, everything's perfect, click OK, and hit enter on your keyboard to get it the right size. And cool thing about that is that Photoshop's clever enough to say, I'm just going to make him a smart object. So you don't really need to, I guess, make that decision at the beginning. But you still have all the same perks of being able to double click it, go into it, and make adjustments, and go back in again, and have it update in Photoshop again. All right, smart objects, kind of confusing, easy with images. You're going to be in lots of images, so 100% smart objects all the time. All right, I think I just need to finish this video now, and we'll get on to the next one, where we look at some of the transform and warp tools. Pretty exciting, cool, fun Photoshop stuff. Let's jump into there now and get started. Hey there, in this video we're going to take this kind of flat graphic at the top right here and wrap it around our coffee cup and stick it under the book and kind of make it so it interacts with the background. You can kind of see it there, all using the magical transform tools in Photoshop. Let's get into it. All right, so first up I've got 17A transform. Okay, it's from Raw Pixel on Unsplash. And let's bring in our logo that we're going to try and morph around here. So let's go to File and let's go to Place Embedded. And we're going to start with this one here called 17B. We're going to use transform logo, 17B. Click on place. Yep, everything's perfect. Click OK. And then we're going to get it to the size we want. I'm happy how it comes in. I'm just going to hit return on my keyboard or enter. And remember from the last video when we talked about smart objects and we're like, Photoshop is awesome and it converts it to a smart object automatically. The very next video, that's going to cause us problems. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to learn some of these edit transform tools. You can do the basics while it's a smart object, like scale and rotate, which we've covered already, and we'll cover skew. I'd never use skew. Okay, you might need skew. Okay, I'm going to hit escape to say no, I didn't mean that. So not a smart object, it's not going to work for us in this case. So we just right click the name and we go to this one that says rasterize layer. Okay, nothing changes except the icons go, and we get to do this. We get to go to edit transform, and we're going to start with distort. Okay, and it's just going to allow us to, it looks kind of similar as scale, but when you grab one of the corners, you'll notice it's a little bit squidgy. Okay, so what I'm going to try and do is I can click anywhere in the middle to move it. Don't use the little crosshairs in the middle, just anywhere else. And then I'm just going to kind of try and lay this thing down on the ground. There's just a lot of like tongue out going, does that look right? Does that look right? There's a lot of that. Okay, when you're doing this technique. Okay, I'm just trying to make it look like it's on the floor. Could be painful to watch. And yeah, I fiddle around with the edges to make it feel like it's on the ground. You give that a go. Okay, when you're finished though, remember it'll be all grayed out until you hit return on your keyboard or enter on your keyboard to say, yep, that's what I meant. Cool, so that is the distort transformation. There's a few other ones we'll just quickly discuss rather than go through. Under edit, transform, there is the option of flipping vertical and horizontal, just kind of flips it over. Okay, let's look at one of the other ones. Let's bring in another graphic. Let's go to File, let's go to Place Embedded. You could be copying and pasting from Photoshop, avoiding the smart object and using pixels in that case. Let's go down to 17C, just a square version that I made. Click OK. If you do get stuck in this kind of middle land, okay, it just means that, again, nothing's going to work. It's kind of saying, I'm bringing it in, but what size would you like it to be? I'm just going to say, enter on my keyboard, bring it in that size, please. Same problem as before. We're going to have to right-click them and go to Rasterize Layer. With my Move tool, I'm just going to move it into the middle here, and now I'm going to I want to kind of make it wrap around this coffee cup. Now there is a setting in here that I'll just quickly show you. Perspective. I never use perspective. Why? Because I just find I use warp. It does this, which is kind of cool. You might like this. This might work for you, but you can't kind of rotate it. And I find to do that effect that we did earlier, distort is a lot more flexible. Okay, you might like perspective. Have a play with it. I don't find it very useful at all. I'm going to hit escape. The one I do find super useful is under edit, transform, there's this one called warp. So I use that one and that one quite a bit when I'm trying to fake things. Okay, so distort was great for laying this guy down on the ground, and warp, it works very similar, except it's more like fabric now. So I'm going to zoom in, move across, and if I grab one of the corners here and just drag it around, can you see it's more like fabric, whereas this was kind of like, you know, we were playing with the perspective and it was quite solid, whereas this, everything's kind of bendy. So the cool thing about this, there's pros and cons. And there are some default shapes up the top here. You can pick arc, okay, and you can pick lower arc, and there's some adjustments over here. And you might get lucky and like, you might just get the perfect one. So say this one here, the band, say it's a wine bottle and there's no, like at the moment, there's a bit of a perspective here. It's not straight on. So you might decide that actually you can go negative. So say -50, maybe -20. Okay, and you can kind of get it, but there's this other kind of, I want it to be flaring out a little bit. So these custom ones, okay, are not going to be that useful, except for fish. Remember fish? Can we do this with type? You always need fish. There's never not occasion for fish. And if you want to get back to custom, it's this top one here. Okay, actually, I don't want to start with fish, so I'm going to hit escape on my keyboard to get back to how it was and just start again. Edit, transform, and let's go to warp. Okay, and what I'm going to do is, again, just kind of a lot of playing around going, oh yeah, how does this, there's a lot of dragging over. So, and what happens is there's kind of four main corners. So these kind of four corners, okay? And then there's these things, these handles that affect how it gets into these corners. So you need to play around with a bit of both. Okay, so you can just watch me. There's a lot of just trial and error and practice in this case. Okay, out a bit further. And what I'm looking at is I'm just trying to mock up, trying to follow the edges here and follow the cup top and bottom. So I need this to bulge out a little bit. I need this to kind of come out a little bit here. So we're doing quite a rigid object. I use this technique for, say it's I'm mocking up an image on a billboard. So I've got a photo of a billboard and I've got my kind of like design that I've made for the billboard. It's a good way of kind of just, you know, trying to stick it on there and fake it. I use this quite a bit when we do branding deals where we're trying to get sponsors' logos onto shirts and stuff. We want to mock it up, okay? And another use, you might not be using this much, but I got a few tattoos, and what I do is when I'm designing them, I like to mock them up on my body in Photoshop where they would be colors, like look, just to kind of, yeah, bend them around, because you can get quite, you can see you can kind of follow the curves of the body with enough kind of prodding. I'm going to go, I've gone and wrecked mine now. Don't prod it too much. Okay, so you can like form this around the human body as well, which is quite cool. So I'm gonna try and get mine back to roughly where it was. You're getting the idea now that I've wrecked mine. It looked better before. Okay, so I'm gonna jump out now and pause the video and actually make it look half decent like I had it before, and I'll be back. All right, and I'm back, and I spent a bit of time just kind of flaring it out, matching that. How long did it take? Oh, I don't know. I was at it for about 2 or 3 minutes. Okay, trying to get the bulges right. There's no miracle potion for that. But the last thing we'll do before we go is the distorting and the warping is awesome. You need both of them in your toolkit, but I want to get this to interact with the background a little better because it's the same color across and it looks a little fake. So we're going to make it a little less fake by, let's find the right layer. It's this layer here. I turn the eye on and off to work out which layer I'm on. And at the top here, we're going to change the blending mode. We're not going to cover blending modes hardcore. Now we're just going to look at switching it from normal to this magical one called multiply. And you can see it just interacts with the background a whole lot better. It's the way that this layer interacts with the things underneath. It's the same with this layer here. If I click on my transform logo and I go into normal and multiply, you can see it just blends with the background. It changes the color a bit, but actually makes it feel a lot more realistic. The cool thing about it is if I click on this, I can move it around. Because it's interacting with the background, you can see it kind of starts looking pretty cool, huh? All right, so that's going to be it for our transforming. Let's jump into the next video where we start looking at photo retouching. All right, I'll see you in the next video. Welcome back, everyone. In this video, we're going to look at my favorite tool in Photoshop. It's called the spot healing brush, and it's used a lot for retouching. We're going to do a couple of cool things like this. We'll remove some graffiti off the wall. Magic, huh? We're going to remove some blemishes of this man. See his face before, after. We're even going to go as far as removing people completely. Look, what do you mean? There he is. Look, there was a person there, and now it's gone. Cool, huh? Let's go learn how to use this fancy tool in Photoshop right now. All right, so let's open up our exercise files. File open, and there's going to be 3 that we're working with, 18A, B, and C. So we'll start with this one here. Now we're going to retouch out some of his blemishes and things. Now, I worked as a retoucher for a long time, and I don't really like what we do. I love the technology though, so let's look at the technology, not so much the faking life stuff. So what we're going to do, we're going to use this thing called the healing brush. Okay, so the spot healing brush is the top option. So click and hold down, we want this one here. Okay, and in terms of brush size, it will depend on your image. In this particular one, I'm using about 50. Okay, so you can drop this down. I use my brackets there, remember from earlier? Okay, so brackets are really good for changing brush sizes. Doesn't matter if it's the healing brush or just the regular brush tool. So I've got my size at 50 and crank your hardness down to 0. So just drag it down to 0. Just gives a nice
طبعا احنا حاليا مثل ما شفنا
even
خلينا
edge.
نوقف شوية
So
عشان احنا نشوف
when
الموضوع.
you're using it,
مثل ما احنا شايفين رايح هو على الإيزر اللي هي المساحة وقاعد عم يحاول إنه يمسح في الشعر، ولكن في مثل ما حكينا احنا بأول المحاضرة في طرق أفضل بكتير. فإن شاء الله من هذه الطرق نحن حاولنا نشرحها قدر المستطاع وراح نكملها كمان في الغد. فاليوم حكون انتهى درسنا، إن شاء الله تكونوا استفدتوا. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.